Okay. Thank you. We'll dissolve it.
Can find a spot somewhere in here.
Okay, good evening. Welcome. Thank you. So I'm Scott McDermott, your town moderator. Once again, very, very pleased to be here at Medfield High School for a special town meeting. I'm advised by our town clerk that we have a quorum. Tonight we have just 3 articles to address as the legislative body of the town of Medfield. First, I'd like to thank the Medfield High School Jazz Combo for providing our entertainment tonight. Combo, representative of our, really a great music program. It's a student-run ensemble. Everything from the choice of repertoire to the running of rehearsals is done by these students. They perform at both school and private events, and last year, this jazz combo received a gold medal in its first appearance at the State Jazz Festival. So thank you all. And thank you, Doug Olson. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Okay. Okay, I will now ask that our town clerk read the return of service of the warrant.
By virtue of this warrant, I have notified and warned the inhabitants of the town of Medfield qualified to vote in elections and at town meetings by posting attested copies of same at 5 public places 14 days before the date of the meetings as within directed. Constable Officer Lars Anderson, signed September 18th, 2013.
Okay, now I ask you to stand, and Senior Kelly McManus is going to lead us in the singing of our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous flight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in our, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Kelly. Kelly is a senior, performs with our concert choir and our jazz choir, and was a featured vocalist last year in the production of Seussical. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Tonight I'll introduce the members of our town government joining me here on the platform. On my left, the members of the Warrant Committee: Gus Murby, Joanna Hilvert, Tom Marie, Martha Fester, Greg Sullivan, Barbara Gips, and Nick Athanasitis. So welcome. Thank you for all that you guys do. And on my right, our town clerk, Carol Mayer. Next to Carol, Evelyn Clark is the administrative assistant to the Board of Selectmen. Christine Trioweiler. Christine is the assistant town administrator. Michael Sullivan, our town administrator. Mark Fisher is the chairman of the Board of Selectmen. Osler Pete Peterson, selectman. Richard DeSorga, selectman. And Mark Sorrell, town council. Thank you. At this time, I will make a motion to permit non-voting participants to sit within the town meeting and to speak to the community as requested. We reserve a special visitors section of the meeting for this purpose, and I would just like to read now the visitors today. First, I'd like to welcome Jeffrey Marsden. Jeffrey, if you could stand up. This is our new superintendent of schools. If you haven't met Jeffrey, welcome to Medfield. Charles Kellner, Director of Finance and Operations for the school. Kenneth Feeney, Superintendent of Public Works. I understand Ken is ill, and we wish him a speedy recovery. Mark Sorrell, Joy Rasciuto, Town Accountant. Sarah Raposa, Town Planner. John Naff, Building Commissioner. James Snyder for Park and Recreation. Deborah Kelsey, our Library Director. And Michael Viano, who is a developer who is going to address us a little bit later tonight. So welcome. So now the motion. I move that non-voting guests sitting in the visitor section be permitted to sit within our town meeting and to speak to the community as requested. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Please say no. The motion carries. Welcome. Thank you very much. I would now like to review the meeting guidelines. Essentially, this will be very similar to the guidelines employed at our annual town meeting. These guidelines combine a blend of principles of fairness and prudence and expedience and respectful and informative dialogue, considerations of the best interests of our community, past precedent, and my discretion. So here are our guidelines for tonight. There are 3 articles for consideration tonight. We will address them in the order they appear on the warrant. Article 2 and Article 3 will require a 2/3 vote for passage. The subject matter of the meeting tonight is limited to these articles before us. I will limit the discussion to the specifics of these articles. In this regard, when discussing Articles 1 and 2 on the water tower and the well fields of the former Medfield State Hospital, there would be a temptation to expand this dialogue to a broader issue concerning the former state hospital and the very important strategic issues associated with the town's dialogue and negotiations with the Commonwealth. And this freight train is coming down the track, so we'll be back here again at some point to address those issues. But tonight, I'm going to limit the discussion to the specifics contained within the article. The moderator will recognize the warrant committee for the purpose of making the main motion on each of the first 2 articles, and the proponent of Article 3 on the 3rd article. After the main motion is made, I will recognize a member of the warrant committee to provide a report, or in the case of Article 3, 2 members of the warrant committee to provide their report. The moderator will then ask after the report for the articles on the main motion. There is no vote, no requirement of a second on from the floor on the main motions. As each article of the warrant is presented, the discussion and the vote are not on the article as posted, but are on the motion as read to you. So the discussion is on the motions. To avoid any confusion, I will allow only one motion to amend be pending on the floor at any one time regarding any of the motions. Any voter wishing to speak to the town meeting should go to the designated microphone. On the 3rd article, I will ask proponents to come to microphone number 1, and any opponents to come to microphone number 2. This will allow us to assess the sentiments on the motions and to gauge the need for the town meeting to hear further discussion. Upon being recognized by the moderator, the speaker at the microphone should identify him or herself by name, street address, and any town office, if there is a town office. It is requested that all participants speak to the community by generally addressing their comments and views through the moderator. The moderator will enforce a discretionary time limit on speakers. The moderator asks that speakers not be offended if I ask them to complete their remarks within a limited time frame. It will be the practice of the moderator to take voice votes first. If the moderator is in doubt as to the outcome of the voice votes, we will then ask for a show of hands. If I remain in doubt after a show of hands, then we will do a vote by standing count. Such count shall be administered by Conrad Bletcher, the deputy moderator. Once the voting procedures commence on a standing count, I would ask there be no further discussion and that everybody just remain standing till I ask you to be seated. If members of the town meeting doubt the ruling of the moderator on any voice vote or any vote taken by hand, any 7 voters may demand that a standing vote be taken. So at this point in time, I'd ask that all cell phones, portable devices, and pagers should be turned off or sent to silent throughout the meeting. And I'd like to welcome Representative Denise Garlick. How are you, Denise? Thank you for being here again. Really appreciate it. Okay. Okay.
Limitation on discussion to waive that provision by law.
I don't. Okay, we also need a motion from the floor. It's a standard motion we do at town meetings in order to be able to waive a provision in the town bylaws that would allow for more than one speaker for or against on each vote and to waive time limits. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Article number 1. Article number 1 is an article to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to petition the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for special legislation to direct the Commissioner of the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance to transfer to the town for no or nominal consideration the Medfield State Hospital water tower and related land and easements, and the so-called Medfield State Hospital tubular well field and related easements, totaling approximately 29 acres for public purposes, including the maintenance and improvement of the current and public water supply system, and legislation to include such terms, conditions, and language as the Board of Selectmen determines to be in the best interest, provided that any provision for the town's payment of compensation shall require further town meeting authorization or to do or act in anything in relation thereto. Mr. Athenizer, do you have a positive motion?
Yes, we do. We move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to petition the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for special legislation to direct the Commissioner of the Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance to transfer to the town for no or nominal consideration the Medfield State Hospital water tower and related land and easements, and the so-called Medfield State Hospital tubular well field and related easements, totaling approximately 29 acres for public purposes, including the maintenance and improvement of the current and future public water supply system, and legislation to include such terms, conditions, and language as the Board of Selectmen determines to be in the best interest, provided that any provision for the town's payment of compensation shall require further town meeting authorization.
Thank you. And do you have a report?
Yes, we do. The land the town is petitioning the state to transfer is needed to enable the town to address an urgent need to replace the existing water tower at the state hospital with a new water tower that can be fully integrated into the town's existing water system and that can serve as a backup source of water in the event that the town's other water tower ever needs to be taken out of the service. This land transfer also transfers an established well field to the town as a potential water source in the future, should the town have a need to ever bring an additional well field into service. This transfer is intended to be made at no cost or only nominal cost to the town as part of the mediated settlement for the construction and demolition debris area cleanup agreement. The state's Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance has endorsed this transfer. The Warrant Committee recommends approval of this article.
Thank you. This article requires only a simple majority vote. Are there any questions or comments? Mr. Mazzaro, microphone 2.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm going to try to keep this as hopefully shorter than the article. I'm Bill Massaro, 36 Evergreen Way, obviously here in Medfield. And as a concerned resident, at each of the last 5 town meetings, I stood at one of these microphones to ask for money to hire environmental and legal consultants to help the town review DCAMM's cleanup at the hospital property. And because you approved those funds, the town's mediation committee, John Thompson, chairman, Ann Thompson, and myself as members, we were able to successfully reach agreement with DCAMM for a significantly better cleanup alongside and in the Charles River. And as part of that settlement, as Nick read, DCAMM agreed to transfer at no cost to Medfield 29 acres of the currently unused but viable hospital well field and 6 acres of land surrounding the water tower. So for the first time, I'm not here tonight asking for money. So fortunately, I don't have to talk about the future, right? But I am here on behalf of the Medfield State Hospital Mediation Committee to ask your help in getting this new legislation filed. And just to explain what this is all about, to get the legislation filed, the selectmen need your approval tonight so that they can ask Senator James Timilty and Representative Denise Garlick to submit the legislation, which, by the way, we've already drafted with DCAMM's help and with help from Senator Timilty's office. And this will be submitted to the Massachusetts General Court. So your yes vote tonight for Article 1 will authorize our selectmen to ask our legislators to file a bill allowing DCAMM to transfer these properties at no cost to the town. So I would ask you please to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If there are none, we'll put Article 1 to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I deem that the article carries by the required majority. Thank you. Article number 2. Article number 2. To see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money and determine in what manner said sum shall be raised for the purpose of conducting preliminary design and cost estimates for the construction of a new Medfield State Hospital water tower and appurtenant water mains, and to authorize the Board of Water and Sewerage to accept grants from the state and/or federal governments and to enter into contracts with consultants, designers, and contractors, or to do anything in relation thereto. It's an article that is offered by the Board of Water and Sewerage. It does require a 2/3 vote for passage because of a transfer from the stabilization fund, and the positive motion is going to be offered by Gus Murby.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Move that the town vote to appropriate $150,000 and to meet said sum, $8,081 be transferred from account number 6041095900005. Article 15 of the 2004 annual town meeting, water system vulnerability assessment. $2,712 be transferred from account number 6041095900011. Article 14 of the 2007 annual town meeting SCADA acquisition, and $139,207 be transferred from the stabilization fund for the purpose of conducting preliminary design and cost estimates for the construction of a new Medfield State Hospital water tower and appurtenant water mains, and to authorize the Board of Water and Sewerage to accept grants from the state and/or federal governments and to enter into contracts with consultants, designers, and contractors for said purpose.
Okay, and do you have a positive motion?
I do.
A report.
This article seeks voter approval for the Board of Water and Sewerage for funding of a contract for preliminary design and cost estimates to construct a new water tower on the land identified in Article 1. Medfield is currently relying on the Mount Nebo water tower for its drinking water. If that water tower were to be taken out of service, water drawn from the existing water tower on the state hospital property would need to be boiled before drinking it. This vulnerability in our water supply probably represents the top priority need in the town right now. Current plans for obtaining funding for this contract call for the water department to borrow funds from the town's stabilization fund until such time as the water department has sufficient funds of its own to cover the cost of the contract. The expectation is that water department money will become available to fund this contract in sufficient time for an article to be included in next April's annual town meeting, asking voters to authorize the redeposit of this money back into the stabilization fund. The Warrant Committee recommends approval of this article.
Thank you. And do we have a representative of the Board of Water and Sewerage?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jeremy Marcette, resident of Colonial Road and chairman of the Board of Water and Sewerage. The existing water storage tank at the former Medfield State Hospital is a critical component of the water distribution system for our entire town. Its replacement is the highest priority of the Board of Water and Sewerage. Regardless of the redevelopment of the former Medfield State Hospital, a second water storage tank is needed for redundancy to meet the town's current maximum water maximum day water demand and to provide water storage for fire protection. Recently, the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection required the town of Medfield to isolate the former State Hospital storage tank from the town's distribution system due to water quality issues. Since that time, the tank has been removed from regular service. The town's only other water storage tank is at Mount Nebo and is 30 years old and will need rehabilitation in 2016. Water quality issues also led to a mandate from Mass DEP to disinfect the town's water supply by the addition of chlorine. Until system improvements are completed, notably replacing the State Hospital water storage tank with a modern, well-functioning tank, the town may not pursue approval from Mass DEP to discontinue chlorine disinfection. Article 2 would fund and authorize the Board of Water and Sewerage to begin design of a replacement tank and connecting water mains. The construction project would be let for public bid late this winter with the goal to have a definitive construction value to be brought forward for approval at the spring 2014 annual town meeting. The funding for the design would ultimately be funded from certified available free monies from the Water Enterprise Fund, with the town incurring no additional debt. The Board of Water and Sewerage urges your support for Article 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you mind remaining right there? Are there any questions for Mr. Marset? Are there any comments? Okay, if there are.
Hi, Jonathan Bennett, 137 Harding Street. I just was reading through the information provided on the water tank, and it would be helpful to me and probably others if we could get a little bit clearer idea of what is actually wrong with the tank that requires it to be replaced. Chlorine's pretty cheap compared to putting in a new tank, and I just wanted to find a couple of details on what the town and DEP thinks is wrong with the current tank at the hospital.
Mr. Marset?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The existing tank at the State Hospital is over 80 years old. It's of an old type of construction. The last time it was repainted, it was sandblasted. It's made out of sheet metal that's riveted together. It's at the end of its useful service life. It's also constructed at a lower elevation than the Mount Nebo storage tank, so it doesn't function well with the town's entire water distribution system. So a replacement tank would be set at a higher elevation with more usable storage that would better integrate and provide more consistent water pressures and supply for the entire town.
Okay. Other questions or comments? If there are none, we'll put Article 2 to a vote. It requires a 2/3 vote for passage. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I declare it passes by the required 2/3 majority. Article 3 is an article that's offered by the Board of Selectmen. Article 3, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire by purchase, eminent domain, or otherwise a certain tract of land containing approximately 31 acres, together with all improvements thereon, located on Foundry and Phillip Street, consisting of all the land subject to a certain agreement of sale between the trustees of Redgate Realty Trust et al. As sellers and Michael Viano et al. As buyers, dated July 31, 2012, namely, Parcel B, containing 30.8 acres shown on plan of Redgate Farm, recorded with the Norfolk Registry of Deeds in Plan Book 603, page 7, being a portion of the land described in a deed recorded in Book 28039 on page 347, said land also being shown on Town of Medfield Board of Assessors maps on map number 39 as lot number 33 for a total acquisition price, including expenses of $1,400,000 to be used for municipal purposes limited to open space and passive recreation. Said authorization to include the exercise of the town's first refusal option as provided in General Laws, Chapter 61, Section 8, and to appropriate, transfer from available funds, including the Conservation Fund established pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 8C, and/or borrow such sums of money as may be necessary to fund both the acquisition price and any incidental legal, engineering, or other acquisition expenses, and to authorize the treasurer collector, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, to borrow in accordance with the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 7, Paragraph 3, or any other enabling statute, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to execute any and all documents and to take any and all other actions necessary to accomplish said land acquisition, provided that all appropriations and/or borrowing authorized under this article may be contingent upon voters' approval of a so-called Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion as provided in General Law, Chapter 59, Section 21C, or to do anything in relation thereto, period. So this article does require a 2/3 vote. And this is the way that we're going to proceed. Because the warrant committee is split on this, I'm going to ask for the positive motion to come from the sponsoring agency, to come from the Board of Selectmen. So that is going to be read by Mr. DeSorga. And then the warrant committee, Greg Sullivan, is going to provide a positive report. Tom Maria is going to provide a negative report. And then I will go to the proponents. Mr. DeSorga will speak for the Board of Selectmen. We'll go to the opponents. We have a very short presentation authorized by me, by Mr. Viano, and then there will be questions of the proponents and the opponents, and after the questions, then we will open up the microphones, comments, questions, and your point of view. And when we do that, I will direct people who are proponents to go to microphone number 1, and people who are opponents to go to microphone number 2, as I said, so that we can assess and gauge the sentiment on the votes. So with all of that said, that's the way we'll be proceeding here over the next few minutes. I would ask for Mr. DeSorga, if he would, to read a positive motion.
Mr. Moderator, move that 1, the town authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire by purchase, eminent domain, or otherwise a certain tract of land containing approximately 31 acres, together with all improvements thereon, located on Foundry and Phillip Streets, consisting of a portion of the land subject to the certain agreement of sale between the trustees of Redgate Realty Trust et al., sellers, and Michael Viano et al., buyers, dated July the 31st, 2012, namely Parcel B, containing 30.8 acres shown on a plan of Redgate Farm, recorded with Norfolk Registry of Deeds in Plan Book 603, page 7, being a portion of the land described in a deed recorded in Book 28039, page 347. Said land also shown on Town of Medfield Board of Assessors map on map 39 as Lot 33, for total acquisition price, including expenses, of $1,400,000 for municipal purposes, limited to open space and passive recreation. Said authorization to include the exercise of the town's first refusal option as provided in General Laws, Chapter 61, Section 8. 2, the sum of $1,400,000 is appropriated to pay costs for purchasing the land described above, including the payment of all other costs, incidental or related thereto. And to meet this appropriation, $40,000 shall be transferred from the Conservation Fund established pursuant to General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8C, and the Treasurer, with the approval of the Selectmen, is authorized to borrow $1,360,000 in accordance with the provisions of General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, parentheses 3, or pursuant to any other enabling statute. And 3, the town authorized the Board of Selectmen to execute any and all documents and to take any and all other action necessary to accomplish said land acquisition, provided, however, that no fund shall be borrowed or expended pursuant to this vote unless and until the voters of the town shall have voted to exclude the amount required to repay any bonds or notes authorized by this vote for the limitations of total property taxes contained in General Law, Chapter 59, Section 21C, also known as Proposition 2.5, period.
Thank you. Mr. Sullivan.
The Warrant Committee had an even split vote of 3 votes in favor of passage and 3 votes against. Because of the split vote, the Warrant Committee is providing both a positive and a negative report on the warrant article. The warrant report in favor of passage of Warrant Article 3. The Warrant Committee members in favor of passage of Article 3 feel that the piece of land is one of the last few open spaces left in the town that can be acquired and that it can be purchased at an extremely good price. The low purchase price, along with the low interest rates that are available for its financing, will allow the town to purchase the property with a relatively low carrying cost. The significance of this land is even greater when considering its proximity to the adjacent Scout land property. These two properties taken together provide 55 acres of preserved open space in Medfield, and they connect to open space in Walpole that provides trail access all the way to North Street in Walpole. If the land were to be purchased for private development, this land would not be accessible to town residents, and access to the Scout land property would be much more restrictive. We also feel that any net gain or loss in town revenue by having the property developed would ultimately have an insignificant impact on the property taxes of the residents of Medfield, and therefore should not be a major factor in your decision on whether or not to purchase this great piece of land. The town's acquisition of this land for open space would make it accessible to all residents of Medfield. We feel that the addition of this valuable public resource would have a significant positive impact on the overall character of the town, its environmental attractiveness, and the quality of life of its residents. The town the town purchase of this property would also afford better protection to the town well area on Elm Street by protecting the brook and wetlands on the property that run to this locale. The town has benefited from the foresight reflected in past decisions to acquire land of this significance. The purchase of Noon Hill, the land behind the Wheelock School, and other such purchases have proven to be wise decisions that have contributed to the overall quality of the town and its character. This proposed purchase represents another instance where foresight today can provide the town with a valuable asset that provides sustained recreational opportunities, conservation benefits, and environmental benefits that will benefit today's residents as well as the residents of the town for generations to come. The Planning Board, Medfield Conservation Commission, and the Medfield Open Space and the Recreation Committee have all unanimously voted to endorse the town's purchase of this land. Because of the significant positive impact this opportunity offers the town, the value that it adds to adjacent property that the town already holds as open space, and the attractiveness of the price at which the town can acquire this property, we wholeheartedly recommend that you approve the town's plan to purchase this important piece of property.
Thank you. Mr. Murray.
Statement of the warrant committee members recommending against Article 3. Article 3 requires the voters of the town of Medfield to weigh the benefit to the town of 31 acres of additional open space between Phillip and Foundry Street at a cost to the town of approximately $1.4 million plus interest. Against the additional tax revenue that will come from constructing 7 houses, each of which is likely to be assessed in excess of $1 million. The 3 warrant committee members who recommend opposing Article 3 wish to make the following points for town meeting to consider when making this judgment. First, over the next 5 years, the town will be faced with a number of pressing needs that will require additional property tax revenue to support bond issues related to 1, water infrastructure, 2, a public safety building, 3, the development of the state hospital property, and 4, renovations to the Dale Street School. This does not include whatever resolution the town makes of its long-term unfunded liabilities for employee and retiree health care expenses. We do not believe there is such a pressing or urgent need for this parcel as open space to warrant a debt override to buy it. While the impact on individual taxpayers from this bond issue may appear small, we do not believe it can be viewed in isolation. The cumulative effect of these small per-parcel increases can be large, and we should weigh each one in light of the larger fiscal picture. Second, there is a lot of open space in town. Currently, the Redgate proposal is on private property, and the town has no public access to it. This proposal from the developers will enhance public access to the property from where it currently stands at no cost to the town. This is a 31-acre parcel, not a 300-acre parcel, and we have seen no great clamor in town for this particular open area. Medfield certainly benefits from its open space, but do we need to spend more money to acquire more open space? Finally, we take issue with the assertion that the town should pay $1.4 million plus interest to avoid what even the supporters of Article 3 say is only a $7,000 net cost to the town each year. In fact, the net gain or loss to the town is uncertain because we cannot know for certain who is going to move into those houses and when. We do take issue with the assertion that the cost of educating the additional school children can be calculated by taking the historical per pupil cost and then multiplied by the number of additional students, and claim that as an incremental cost of the additional student. Unless additional staff is required to educate these additional students, the incremental cost is minimal. Per pupil costs are calculated historically, not prospectively. We do take issue with the assertion that the incremental cost of educating additional school children can be calculated by taking historical per pupil costs and multiplying them by the number of projected additional students. Unless additional staff is required to educate the additional students, the incremental cost is minimal. In short, this type of low-density, high property tax development can help offset some of the projected costs associated with the higher-density, lower-tax properties. In any event, this argument would support a moratorium on any development at all, and we do not believe this to be healthy for our town. In the end, while we recommend against the approval of Article 3, we appreciate the position of the proponents. The question is a simple one: additional revenue and positive development against a beautiful 30-acre parcel for passive recreation and open space.
Thank you very much. Mr. DeSorger.
Mr. Moderator, if the town did not have this unique right of first refusal, and if the land was going to be developed no matter what, then I would have no issue with the developer's plans. At $1.4 million or $45,000 per acre, when the average house lot in Medfield is going for $350,000 an acre, this is an incredible deal, whether it's for the developer or the town. The developer stands to make substantial profit, which is great. And if I were him, I would be doing everything possible and getting everyone I know to defeat the article so I could buy the land. But the town has been given the ability to act first. As selectmen, we urge you to vote yes. First, the 31 acres of pristine land leads into 23 acres of land given to the town by the Levesque family, the so-called scout land. In effect, the town would be gaining access to almost 55 acres of open space, field, meadows, trails, forest lands for all time, forever. It will become another factor of what I call making Medfield, Medfield. Second, if purchased by the developer, the conservation restrictions placed on the land by the developer will always remain private. You and I will never be able to use it, never be able to go on it. It will be private. The easement that the developer has created into the scout land, I don't believe will ever actually open up the scout land. To use it, you'll have to walk down a private road through someone's private yard. Look what happened when the same scenario took place on Woodridge Road, the development behind St. Edward's Church. The trustees of reservations, Rhododendron Reservation, for years, was one of the trustees' more heavily used properties, with people hiking in off of Spring Street to view the rhododendrons and hike the trails. As a kid, I used to go there all the time, and later took my children there often. When the houses went in, the planning board required an easement into the reservation, much like the proposed easement at Redgate Farm. At Woodridge, you now have to go down a private road, over a private driveway, through a private yard. Today, that reservation is hardly used. Actually, how many of you here have used that easement to get into the rhododendron reservations in the past 10 years? Very few. People just do not want to walk through people's yards with dogs barking and family events taking place. My fear is the easement will keep the scout land unused, as has happened to Rhododendron Reservation once the houses went in. We have several other easements that have resulted in friction between private landowners and the person using the easement going hiking. The easement of Jade Walk is another example. I also have a hard time with the projected 1.5 children for each house to be built. Clearly, our schools are the #1 draw to the town. They stand as one of the best school systems in the state. And I am thinking with 5-bedroom houses, you're going to have more than 1.5 children in 5 bedrooms. We were told at the selectmen's meeting that the wealthy families moving into the $1.5 million homes will be putting their kids in private schools. Again, actually, I don't totally buy that. According to the actual school census, Medfield is sending almost 93% of all students into the public schools. Using that ratio, I believe we will be sending more students into our schools than what is projected by the developer. As there is no town sewerage in the area of Phillip and Foundry Streets, each of the 7 houses will have individual in-ground septic systems. And with the $1 million+ homes going there, there is no doubt they will also have lawn services with chemicals and fertilizers to keep the lawns green, all of which enters the groundwater, which sits upstream from our nearby water wells and aquifer off Millbrook near the Wheelock School. There is no greater priority to protect now and into the future than our water system. Our newly reestablished Economic Development Committee and the Cultural District Commission both are developing plans to try to market Medfield as a destination location in which we will encourage business, companies, and light industry to come to Medfield, in turn to help with our tax rate. While the Westwoods and Needhams and Hopkintons have the 128 and 495 to bring industry, which we lack in Medfield, both the Economic and Cultural Committees have said we need to develop and market what we do have. And both have stressed using open space as an advantage. With 55 acres of pristine open space, Redgate Farm and the Scout Land will join Rocky Woods and Noon Hill as sites to market. Clearly, the outdoors, healthy environment, jogging, hiking, getting our kids away from the television and the computer games and giving them avenues for exercise are growing in importance. Companies are looking for such environments for their employees, and we will have the ability to market Medfield and bring people because of that open space. Finally, there is what I call the wisdom factor. The wisdom factor is when years later, people look back at a vote taken by town meeting and they say, there was a lot of wisdom in that vote. How lucky we are that those people had the foresight to buy that land or make that appropriation. Town meeting voters back in 1975 raised their taxes significantly to support the purchase of some 260 acres of land in Noon Hill. As you know, Noon Hill today is a vast area of conservation land, forests, ponds, and streams. It's a gold mine, invaluable resource for the town of Medfield. We've saved tenfold the cost of that land, and it's now all paid for, all free for us to use forever. We, that future generation, are reaping benefits of their far-sighted action. They had the wisdom in that vote. Voters overwhelmingly approved the purchase of land behind the Wheelock School when developers threatened to build on land surrounding our town water wells. That action has preserved Medfield's valuable water supply. We purchased the HomeQuest land, where today our community gardens are located. In 2008, the residents voted to preserve 34 acres owned by the Cronin family along School Wright and North Streets. The property was suitable for residential housing. Because of that vote, the property is protecting the future water supply that the town will be receiving for free from the state because of your passing Article 1, and will be preserving open space and recreation land for all time. There was wisdom in that vote. Now, there is no doubt, as was pointed out, we have many financial items on our plate. Mike Sullivan will go over the financial aspects, but the cost lies in the 20 years to pay the actual cost of the land. At 5 cents on the tax rate to start, then dropping down to 3 cents, or about $5 on a $100,000 home, which would equal about $15 on a $300,000 home, or $25 on a $500,000 home, and so forth, for the cost per year of either, say, a bottle of wine, or a case of beer, or lunch for two at Blue Moon. We can preserve this pristine open space for all times, for generations to come. It's a one-time opportunity to make this purchase. It is one of the few remaining open spaces left. It's pristine. I guess the decision you will have to make is whether that cost of lunch for two at Blue Moon is worth it. The Board of Selectmen believes it is. We urge a yes vote on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Viano, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you to the town meeting. My name is Michael Viano. I'm a resident of Walpole, and with me tonight is Sean McEntee, Medfield resident. Together we're the development team for the Redgate Farm subdivision. Also with us tonight is Robin Kenny of the Kenny family on Phillip Street, the owners of the property. We just want to take a few minutes to tell the town meeting the highlights of the plans which have been approved for this land. The land consists of, as has been stated, 30.8 acres between Phillip, let me see if I can make this laser work. Well, Phillip Street and Foundry Street, Phillip Street being in the lower right-hand corner, Foundry Street on the left-hand side of the plan. Several years ago, the Kennys sought to find ways to have a conservation-minded use of the property which preserved the scenic views of the hayfields that you see when you go by on Phillip Street, that would have a minimum impact as possible on the property, and which would look, when it was all done, now and in 20 years, as though little or nothing had changed on the property. We have a track record of limited development, conservation-minded projects, so we teamed up with Robin Kenny to get the permits for the plan you see here. This plan has been thoroughly reviewed over the course of the past year by the Planning Board here in Medfield, the Medfield Conservation Commission, the Medfield Board of Health, the Zoning Board of Appeals, all the town departments, as well as the town's engineering consultant. I take particular note that the Conservation Commission and the Board of Health and the engineering consultant did extensive reviews of the proposed plan as to water quality and impacts on the wetlands and impacts on the well fields, and no such impacts were discerned. The process has resulted in an approved plan which has no wetlands disturbance, no water quality impacts, and preservation of the scenic beauty of this area in perpetuity. The plan consists of 7 oversized lots, which is a reduction from 10 that would be possible by a conventional development, or a 30% reduction in density. Each lot has a deed-restricted area, which are the boxes in the lots that are building envelopes where all construction of housing and any other structures must take place. It is totally limited, other than the driveways and the roadway itself. Construction must be in that area. All of the building envelopes, therefore the houses, are located behind the tree lines and not in any of the fields. The plan as approved requires a state-sponsored conservation restriction, which is outlined in red on the plan. This area protects the wetlands, it preserves the 2 hayfields on either side of the proposed road in perpetuity, and it prohibits clear cutting of the land in the forests. Foundry Street, which is a scenic road, has 2 lots that have their frontage there and would require normally to have, by your zoning bylaw, 2 driveways. However, we have gone to the Zoning Board of Appeals and got permission to put those driveways on the new road, thereby preserving the scenic road on Foundry Street. The road itself that we propose is located where there's an existing tractor road on the property. That road is surrounded on both sides by mature trees, which will largely remain and will not have to be cleared, and they will thus hide the road once it's built from visibility from Phillip Street. The road as proposed and approved is a private road, never to be owned by the town of Medfield, excuse me, and to be maintained by these homeowners who will pay for all snow plowing, repairs to the surface, repairs to the water main, etc. The plan as approved involves no wetland disturbances. We have provided a trail easement for Medfield residents that will begin on Phillip Street, go down the new private road between the two fields, which provide very attractive views of those fields, and then go off on the yellow highlighted area on Lot 4 through the woods, which we will construct at our expense, and that will then go into the land of the town of Medfield. That trail, where it goes down the road, does not go near any home or anybody's yard. The trail, when it goes through the woods, is located at an elevation about 10 to 15 feet below the building envelope on Lot 3, and accordingly will not result in neighbors seeing the people walking on the trail or people on the trail seeing what's going on in the neighbor's yard. The plan, I'm sorry. I want to just take a moment to show you an aerial view of the property, which runs from Phillip Street near the Foundry Street near the center of the plan over to Phillip Street in the upper left corner, and you can see the two hayfields, and the trail easement is outlined in red. Where it goes through that stand of trees is the existing tractor road, and that is where the new road would go, and then at the end, once it gets in the woods, it would go through the woods and up to the town land on the left-hand side of the plan. The yellow blocks show the 7 houses that would be built on and the location of those, and you can see they are all behind the tree line and with little visibility from Phillip Street and no visibility from Foundry Street. Thank you. If that... Okay, so the trail is going to go down the new road here on the tractor road with views of both hayfields here, and then go off through the woods and up to the town land, the so-called scout land, and these are the locations of the homes to be built, all behind the tree lines. All of these conservation open space features of this plan total 26.7 acres of the 30-acre tract, and they are achieved through the state-sponsored conservation restriction as well as deed restrictions, which are, the way they have been drafted, enforceable by the town of Medfield in perpetuity. All of that conservation and open space features of this plan are being achieved at no cost to the town of Medfield. So to summarize, the conservation highlights of the plan include low density, 7 lots total, no further subdivision, houses set behind the tree lines, 26.7 of the 30.8 acres protected via state-sponsored conservation restriction and/or deed restriction, the scenic vistas preserved through the conservation restriction, including the 2 hayfields visible from Phillip Street with no impact on Foundry Street, and access to the adjacent 25 acres scout parcel that the town owns, and then through that to trails going beyond that down into the town of Walpole with no wetlands impact. I do not want to get too deep into the discussions we had last night with the Warrant Committee about number of students living in these houses and tax revenue versus costs in these houses, but we believe that the financial highlights would show that the new tax revenue of these homes will produce approximately $150,000 per year in new taxes and will have a net positive cash flow impact on the town's financials. That will be achieved with no new debt if the plan goes forward, and that debt would cost the town $95,000 a year for 20 years, which is a total of $1.9 million, including the interest. We believe that the plan, in summary, with the net positive cash flow, the lack of having to purchase the land, and all of the conservation features that have been incorporated in this plan, constitutes a win-win for the town of Medfield, because the goal of open space conservation is achieved at no cost to the taxpayers while generating a new revenue stream for years to come. And I thank the town meeting for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Viano. Michael, stay right there. Okay, next we're going to have questions. So just questions, not comments. Questions that can be directed to Mr. Viano, to Selectman DeSorga, to the Warrant Committee. So if you just have questions of a factual nature, questions of an orientation, in a minute we'll have an opportunity for proponents and opponents to be able to have their say. So are there any questions? Microphone number 2.
Jerry Kazanjian, 77 Granite Street. I'm the Scouting Commissioner for the town of Medfield for the Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts. And my concern with this thing is basically who is going to have control of what is now Scout land? Park and Rec, Conservation Commission, or the Selectmen? My concern is it's passive recreation limits us to no camping overnight. And we've been camping on that land since Scouting started in 1910. Claude Levesque, the son of the people who donated that land, was an Eagle Scout in 1968, is an Eagle Scout in 1968 in Troop 89. So my concern is, are we still going to be able to camp out overnight on our land, which is going to have some nice access, but on the other hand, I don't particularly care to see 7 houses next to our land either. So can you tell me if we're going to be able to still camp overnight on our land, or are we going to lose it to this passive recreation?
Okay.
Maybe Mike Sullivan would be the best on this. We actually had this conversation earlier, and I think we have an answer for you.
Sure. There'll be no change in any use of the Scout land that is, other than access to it, that isn't affected by this purchase. That is under the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction, and they have allowed scouting in there. And since it is called the Scout land, I think they better allow scouting in there. But there should be no change at all in the use of the Scout land.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, question from microphone number 1.
Yes, I may have gotten into the wrong line here, but my name is John Fedak. I'm a resident at 23 Hawthorne Drive in Medfield. I have a couple of questions. Just starting at the basics, can you describe the purpose of the Warrant Committee, what exactly your role is? I'm a novice to town government and would just like to understand what your role is. And then a couple of follow-on questions, if I could, please.
Yep. So this is the legislative body for the town of Medfield that you're sitting within here. And these are a designated committee appointed by the moderator to be the advisors to consider, perhaps in more detail, perhaps in greater scrutiny, these questions, and then to make a recommendation, to provide a report at the town meeting based on their study, based on their examination of the issues that are going to be before the town meeting. So it's not controlling, but they make a recommendation on the articles.
Great, thank you. That actually is a great segue into my second question. So I think I heard Mr. Sullivan say at the beginning that the Warrant Committee split on a 3-3 vote, but I count 7 individuals up there. Can you describe that a little bit, how you got to a 3-3 vote and one perhaps that didn't vote?
I can, and I'll let Mr. Murby kind of comment on this as well. There are 9 members of the Warrant Committee that are appointed on 3-year terms every 3 years. I've been doing this long enough that I've appointed all of these folks. And also Mr. Marcucci, who is not here. 1, 2, 3. Is he the only? Who else is missing? Oh yeah, Jim O'Shaughnessy as well, who's been a great member and is in his second term on the Warrant Committee. So that's a little bit about who would be here. I'll let Gus talk a little bit about what happened last night at a meeting that they held.
In advance of a town meeting like this, basically the Warrant Committee will meet to discuss all of the articles that are up for discussion and to develop a recommendation. As it worked out for this one, because it was a fairly quick cycle to prepare for it, we wound up having our Warrant Committee scheduled last night. Of the 9 members of the Warrant Committee who are on the Warrant Committee, 6 were able to attend. And after at least an hour and a half, perhaps an hour and 45 minutes of very spirited discussion on all sides of this issue. When we took the vote of the 6 present members to come up with the recommendation we present to you here tonight, we split right down the middle.
And are all 6 members that were voting last night in attendance tonight?
No, they're not. One member, Mike Marcucci, was present last night. He happened to be a member who was against the passage of the article. The other, Jim O'Shaughnessy, was neither here last night or tonight. So we happen to know informally that he was in favor of it, but that should not. Our official vote was 3-3. If I could comment just on what that means. A less formal answer on what the warrant committee is here for is we do our best to figure out how to provide adequate funding for the town to be able to operate, but we also are probably the body that has the clearest linkage to being the conscience of the taxpayers. And so we try to provide what the town needs, but we also try to gauge what taxpayers are willing to stomach by way of funding of town operations. Our vote last night reflects, in essence, our sincere lack of certainty about how important open space is to the people here in this room tonight versus how important it is not to put an undue tax burden on people. Somehow or another, after that hour and 45 minutes or so, the vote seemed about appropriate for what we needed to tell you tonight.
Perfect. And can I actually put the squeeze on, and of the members here, can I see a show of hands of who voted for and against of the committee?
No, I don't know that that's...
Yeah.
Is that public record, or...?
It was a public meeting, right? It's a posted meeting.
Yesterday was a public meeting. When we vote, you're going to see where we come out. But the only reason I'd hesitate to do that is we've had a meeting. We've officially developed a recommendation. We stand by that recommendation. There are some different people here, and I can't guarantee you that. In fact, we have 7, so I can guarantee you we won't have a 3-3 split. But I don't think I'd be fair to the people who were here last night to kind of do a revote now.
Fair enough. I was just curious who was for and against. Out of the total open space land that we have currently in the town of Medfield, this would add 30 additional acres. How much open land do we currently have in the town? Open space land is designated.
The town's about 14.5 square miles. The figures I've seen that if you include the Army Corps land along the river, the State Hospital open land, it's somewhere around 35 to 40% of the total land area. So 35 to 40% of 14.5 square miles.
I'm just trying to get a sense of what the 30 acres represents. Is that 5%, an addition of 5% of open space, or?
No, it'll probably be less than 1%. Less than 1%. I think the important part about it, it's a link in the trail system that connects the large parcels of open land.
Thanks for answering my questions.
Okay, thank you. Microphone number 2.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Carol Reed, 1 Penobscot. A simple question. Can you tell me the per pupil expenditure this year, 2013, 2014, for students in Medfield through our public schools?
I'll certainly defer to the superintendent, but I don't want to put him on the spot. But I will. I did get the figures from the school business manager, so I feel a little comfortable. And if he wants to get up and knock my figures, he's more than welcome to. The figure that I got from Charlie Kellner was $12,548. That was based on the state has a formula for calculating every school district's dollar expenditure. And then he added in the percentage increases in the last 2 years' budget to come up with that figure. It includes many things that are not in the school budget. It includes many things, or does not include many things that are in the school budget. For example, it includes a portion of the town accountant and the treasurers because they prepare the payrolls and the vendor warrants. It does not include school busing. It does not include debt on the school buildings. But we use it because that is the best way to establish comparability across the state.
So $12,400.
$12,548, I believe it was.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question from microphone number 1.
Bob Costello, 84 Bridge Street. If this land is developed, it appears we have a trail easement. Where would one park?
People could park at the entrance to the road.
Mr. Viano?
Yes, I said people could park at the entrance to the road.
To the entrance at the private road?
Yes.
On the private road?
Yes, at the entrance.
Have you been,
At the entrance on the private road is where the parking would be for the trail easement? Okay. My question from microphone number 2.
Jim Feeney, Fairview. Based on that last question, have you been to the property in terms of parking? Just seriously, it's
many times.
Very quaint area. My question before the gentleman asked that was the exact same, was how are we going to park there? It's not in a very accessible area from downtown, so you're going to have to be very ambitious for a walk and then walk on the 55 acres. So that's the concern. Phillips is a very thin road. Trees are very close to the edge of the road. That was one of my questions. My second question is, what plans, you take your family out for a hike, you go down this new road. What plans or actions are going to be put in place to avoid inadvertently walking on someone's property and having an unpleasant experience?
When you walk on the roadway, you've got the 2 hayfields which are being preserved on either side of you, and it's a beautiful walk. It's a beautiful walk today on what is now the tractor road. There are no front yards or backyards anywhere that will be visible when you walk down that roadway. When you get to the end and you turn right, we will be building, pursuant to the permits issued by the planning board, with engineering details that are part of those plans. A 15-foot wide easement will be cleared with a 4-foot wide wood chip trail built on top of a gravel base at our expense, with markers at every corner and signage that directs people towards the scout land. And the signage that we're proposing to use would be upscale signage with wooden signs with carved letters, as opposed to just metal signs that were bright green or yellow.
Visibly see that? I mean, I'm a big guy, but you get an average guy in there, maybe it's going to be a little more room.
The easement is 15 feet wide and will be cleared so that the town can take equipment over the easement onto its land, which it apparently has not got adequate access to at this time, and it has not had for many years. But we went with the 4 feet because that was what was requested by the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board.
One last
question.
question.
We do it 6 feet if it satisfies the town.
One last question. I appreciate your answers. Have you ever? I mean, you do this for a living. I don't. But the average person reads a lot about this cluster housing. Has there been any consideration or any conversation of taking these 7 homes, dedicating 6, 7, 8 acres of the 30, and having it kind of carved out and having much more visible for visitors and hikers and joggers and the rest of the folks to realize, hey, this is kind of like the open area, this is kind of like private residence. Has the cluster approach been reviewed, and did you take a look at that aspect or possibility?
We did not look at a cluster per se. What we did here was and the planning board required us to submit a plan showing a conventional development, which would have had a through street paved to the full width, which this street will not be, running from Phillip through the field out to Foundry. And that would have generated 10 lots. There might be an 11th lot there, but there should be 10 lots there. The objective that the owners had and we had from the outset, and we went to the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission for discussion before we drafted these plans last summer. The objective was to do a low-density, oversized lot plan that put the houses behind the tree lines where they're either not visible or barely visible, which preserved about 6 or 8 acres of the hayfields that you see from Phillip Street, and then provided access, which was requested of us by the Planning Board early in the process, in which we agreed to. And then there was Town Administrator Mike Sullivan came to a meeting and asked if we could widen the easement from 10 feet to 15 so he could get equipment over the road to get to the scout land, and we quickly agreed to that as well. there's been a lot of thought that's gone into this plan, both by us, by the owners of the land, and by all of your boards and commissions and your town departments. Police and fire, public works, a lot of thought has gone into this.
I'm sure there is. Thank you for your answers.
Thank you. Question from microphone 1.
Jim Nail, 97 Hartford Street. I still haven't heard a good answer to the question about what parking will be available on that private road. Will there be designated parking spots? If so, how many? And if not, how wide is the road? And will there be a shoulder you can actually pull away on?
Yes, there is a shoulder. The street is 50 feet wide layout, which is your requirement for a conventional street. The paved width is 22 feet, and so there would be shoulders on either side that make up the rest of that space. The plans do not provide for a paved or even a gravel parking area at the outset, but there's room along the side of the road for cars to park. Sorry, Sean.
So I'm just to introduce myself, I'm the et al. In the Michael Viano et al. My name is Sean McEntee. I live at 8 Metacomet Street here in Medfield. Michael's partner. I stood up just to help contribute to answering some of the questions. With respect to the trail easement, with respect to the trail easement, just 2 quick points. The 4 feet wide was the request of the Conservation Commission. And what we agreed to was to build it. I believe they referenced standards that are used in other areas in town. So if people wanted that wider, we would have been happy to do that. Additionally, with regards to parking, it's not something that came up in that process. If that's something that's important, that can be changed. The idea is to provide access to that land. We're happy to do it. And whatever modifications we can make to make people more comfortable that that's the true intent, we'll entertain this.
Okay. Stay right there, Mr. McAtee. Question, microphone number 2.
Paul Ruda, 4 Farm Street. I guess my question would be to the selectmen, and I'd turn it the other way around. If it's going to be conservation, is it going to be passive, recreational? What's it going to be? And where would you park the cars along those narrow streets?
Well, I'll answer that. I believe it's written as the article I just read that it would be municipal for passive recreation and conservation. And I would assume if the town did get that land, we now have some options, just like on Noon Hill. You have a nice little dirt parking area that's there that would fit well in. So if the town had that land, we don't have the problem that the developer would have, because we would have some access to be able to park in there.
What would that, you talking about building a parking lot in there?
No, I'm not talking a parking lot at all, Mr. Ruda. What I'm talking about is a small area like on Noon Hill where the hikers can stop, put their car there, and then can hike in.
All right. I would assume that the developer could create the same type of space.
Well, I have no idea what the developer can do.
Just throwing it out. Someone's going to have to park. I agree. If it's conservation land, you're going to have to create a parking area for the people. If it's conservation land for the developer, they're going to have to do the same thing. I would think that would be the logical thing.
Yeah, well, I don't know. As private property, I guess that would be up to the owners who owned it.
I understand that. But I just want to know where the town was planning on parking it, and you answered the question. Thank you, Richard.
Could I add to that, Mr. Moderator?
Was that coming from?
Could I add to that? The article in front of you does not include this area right here, which is the property of Brenda Kenny, who lives at this house at number 90 Phillip Street, where the existing driveway is. That parcel, which we are acquiring from Brenda, is not subject to the Chapter 61 and is not the subject of this article. And this stretch right along here from the edge of the wetland to here, there's a huge drop right on the edge of Phillip Street. So the only way, since you're only going to get this area here, you have to park here next to Robin Kenny's driveway in the field.
Okay, thank you. Microphone number 1. Question still.
Martha Schmick, 120 Pine Street. I think we all know that a conservation restriction is only as good as the mechanism you have to enforce it. So I would like to know, I've heard the developer speak about a conservation restriction both from the point of view of the state and the point of view of the town of Medfield. I would like some clarification on how the town of Medfield would enforce the restriction if they found a violation. As Mr. DeSorga has pointed out, we know in many other cases where there has been an easement over a piece of private property to get to public spaces, the town has had trouble.
Okay. Question on the enforcement.
The enforcement mechanism is the same for both easements and conservation restrictions. There are options available. We have never had the situation with the various trail easements where it's gotten to that point, but the range of remedies that the town has are the same, which includes going to court to obtain a court order to require compliance. I believe that the conservation easement form from the state would also provide that if the town's required to do that, that they would also recover their attorney's fees and court costs.
And when was the last time that the town did that, please?
We have not done it during my tenure as town attorney.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Eileen Murphy, 5 Metacomet, and former Parks and Rec Commissioner. So just want to make sure I'm hearing correctly. The concern is that we want to make sure that we are keeping open space. So if I'm hearing from the developers correctly, of the 30.8 acres, you're really only developing roughly 4. So the town is going to spend potentially $1.4 million to prevent 4 acres from having trees cut down. But besides from that, you're going to be able to drive by and see the serenity of it today. And if I can do this, if you don't mind, Richard, you asked everyone to show hands as to who's used the rhododendron area. Mr. Moderator, if you don't mind, can I do
Is there a question?
Yeah, question. How many people have actually walked the 25 acres that the town owns today in the last 10 years? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Hi, Dewey.
2 more questions.
Dewey Parsons, 10 Stagecoach Road. That just alluded to what I was going to say. The developers only need a short number of acres to develop what they want to develop. You want to protect the land. It would make sense to me, just from a regular business deal, if we can buy the land for $45,000 an acre. Why don't we buy the whole parcel, sell them what they need, and then give them an easement, take the extra money we make, and build a parking lot?
Mr. Moderator? Mr. Moderator, just to clarify the 4.1 acres, that is the area of the building envelopes, the roadway layout, and the driveways that are allowed under the plan is 4.1 acres. And that is where, other than that, both through the state-sponsored conservation restriction, which is held by your Conservation Commission as the owner of it, and through the deed restrictions, which are enforceable by the town of Medfield by their language, there cannot be clear cutting, and by the planning board's permit for this subdivision, there cannot be clear cutting, but only selective trimming of the forest area.
Thank you. Final question.
Hi, my name is Jason Stenta. I live on South Street. I had 2 questions about just to better understand the costs. One question was whether the selectmen agree that the total cost is actually $1.9 million when you factor in the interest over the period of the loan versus $1.4 million. And then the other thing is, if I look at some of the justifications here for the investment, I'm hearing it's because we can fund it with cheap debt, and also that we're retiring some previous debts that were funded to fund some of the development of the schools and other things in the community. So I think it's an important question of, is this not just a good idea, but the best idea? And I think that I'd be interested in what the group that recommended no from the Warrant Committee. You alluded to a number of other important projects, whether it's the Dale School or police and fire. Do you have a sense of the total cost of those other projects coming down the pipe? And are you able to quantify that, even just to give an order of magnitude of the total cost that we could expect over the next several years with additional bond funding?
Okay, let's deal with the first question first.
Sure. Thank you. I get my speech over early with, because they asked me to address the cost. In regard to your first question, yes, we agree that the cost will be $1.9 million. I worked up a chart based on a 20-year debt schedule and it comes out with a principal cost of $1.4 million, including the $40,000 that's being taken from the Conservation Trust, and $499,800, so $500 for interest and $1.4 million for the land. So yes, it is $1.9 million. It starts out, and you know, these are guesstimates. I used a 3.5% interest rate. We borrowed money last month for the town garage at a 3.22% interest rate, so it is higher than what we recently borrowed the money for. Starts out with a principal and interest payment of $115,600 in the first year, and the 20th year is $70,380. So it's about $85,000 average over the life of the bonds. In terms of what other projects are coming offline, we have a number of projects, and I have a historical debt figure chart here that was prepared by Joy Rashudo, our town accountant, and it goes back to 1994, and it's current up through the end of this fiscal year that we're now in, because I wanted to include the town garage. It started out in 1994. We had outstanding principal of $7,450,000. That rose until it peaked in 2003 when we were involved in the renovations to the 3 schools, and we borrowed $56 million. It went up as high as $67 million, a little over $67 million. When you add the interest into that, it totaled $93 million outstanding principal and interest. As of the end of this current year we're in, the total outstanding principal and interest, including the town garage, which, as I said, we borrowed last month, will be just over $40 million principal and interest. So it has dropped substantially from our peak lending period. A lot of the projects we borrowed are going to be paid off in the next few years. For example, the town hall, I believe, has 2 years, 2 to 3 years left. The library has 2 to 3 years left. The landfill closure has maybe 3 years left. There's a couple of sewer projects that we're finishing up on. Our peak principal and interest annual debt service, which the best way to think of it is your mortgage, annual mortgage payments. They peaked in 2003 when we had the $67 million outstanding at $7.4 million. As of this year, we are at 5.2 million. So we're down 2.1 million on our annual mortgage payments. With the town garage that we just borrowed last month, that will push that up to about 5.6 million. So we are still well below our peak. I wouldn't want to hit the peak again. We have several projects coming up, the public safety building. We're looking at the water tower, although the water tower will be financed from water and sewer rates, so that will not affect your property tax, although if you drink water and flush your toilet, you still pay. The total of those projects is probably principal interest. I've estimated it's going to be somewhere in the order of about $50 million. It's hard to say because, you know, I don't have plans. I don't know exactly what it's going to cost, but somewhere in the order of $50 million principal and interest. We are, however, paying off right now $5 million a year in principal and interest. So that's going down quite rapidly. We also have about $9 million in the bank from school building assistance reimbursement funds, and we have $2 million in the bank from sewer betterment revenues paid in advance. So of the $40 million that's outstanding right now, we probably have, you know, somewhere around $20 million of that has other sources of funding, maybe a little bit less, maybe about 17 million. So we're in very good shape right now. We do have to be careful. This project, I think, is relatively minor compared to the other ones, but I don't know if I answered all your questions. I'll be glad to try if you have anything else.
The second part of the question was directed to the members of the warrant committee. Voted. Did that answer it? You feel that? Okay, good. Okay, so the question phase is over, and now we will allow comments with this just a preamble here. We are a deliberative body. We meet as a deliberative body. Shortly, I hope, we're going to be putting this question to a vote. If you want to make a comment, please be mindful that your comments should add to the knowledge and the understanding and the insights of the body. They should not be repetitive, and at some point, when we feel like we've exhausted new questions, we'll put this to the vote. So if you are a proponent and you feel compelled to make a comment at this point, please line up at microphone 1. If you are an opponent and you feel compelled to make a comment at this point, please line up at microphone number 2.
Again, Paul Ruda.
No, just one second. We're going to allow I'm going to take a little sense of the room here. We'll let you go first, though. Okay, I'd ask that we limit our comments, if we could, to about a minute. We've got 4 proponents and 4 opponents who have lined up to speak to this question, so this should take us about 10 minutes. Mr. Ruda.
Sorry I got up, and then maybe no one else would have. Paul Ruda, 4 Farm Street. Basically, I've lived in the town for 38 years, did the appeals board for 5 years, 3 5-year terms on the planning board, and 3 3-year terms on the selectmen. Sat in on meetings when we did acquire conservation land and when we didn't acquire conservation land. I've always looked at it, that you look at the positive side and the net side and what's the benefit to the town. I looked at this, I tried to study it. I looked at what the town was getting from the owners, the developers, and what the planning board had put together. And I kind of felt that that was on the positive side. The town was going to get passage out to the scout land. The best easements into the scout land right now, I'll agree, probably terrible. This one gives them a good way in. I looked at the negative sides. The negative side was basically, it's been brought up here, the fire, the police. We're going to have to build a water tower. And the wells, from what I understand, my years ago on the selectmen talking to Ken Feeney, that those are low ground wells. You can't use those in these days. You're going to have to put in a new well system, and you're going to have to put in the new piping. So I think we're looking at a lot of money that we have to spend currently coming up down the road. If we're getting what it appears to be almost everything we want, why spend $1.4 million? I like Mike's numbers. Mike's always been good with his numbers. He left one number out, and that's what does the town owe on the unfunded pensions. That's a big number. And that money sometime is going to have to be addressed, I'm sure, unless we're figuring the state's going to be good guys and give it to us, which I doubt. I just feel that this has more negatives than it does positive. And believe me, I've sat up there and I know what it's like, and you have to make the decisions. I would think that we would really come out and not spend the money to do this and save those dollars from when we really need them. Especially even if the hospital comes up and they talk to us about trying to buy the hospital. That's additional money if the town would want to go that way. So I just think we put this money in the bank and keep it for a while. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Microphone number 1.
Frank Perry, 41 Ledge Tree Road. I'm the chairman of the Board of Assessors. The Board of Assessors at our monthly meeting on September 26th voted in a positive fashion for this article. And I don't want to rehash what Greg said and what Richard said, because I think they did a great job. But our basic reasons were we think it's a compelling value to the town. When you combine this with the scout land, it's an assemblage of almost 55 acres of land, which I don't think we're going to get to do again in this town. And thirdly, the town's been subsidizing, in effect, through the Forestry Act, this land, a good portion of this land has paid no more. I think 26 acres of this land has paid $15 a year in taxes. And what the town got for that was a right of first refusal and the ability to go back and collect some rollback taxes. And so we are, in effect, partners with the Kennys. And I just want to make that clear. We already have an investment in the property. My last point is, we talk about, and I have no problem with the developer's plan, except for the fact that we talk about conservation land and open space. It's open space for 7 homes. That's it. And the public cannot go on this property. And I doubt the public is really going to get permission to park on a private drive to access the property, the trail easement.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Eileen Murphy, 5 Minute Comment. As I mentioned before, former Park and Rec Commissioner. And that's why I want to step up to the mic, because I've stood here before at former town meetings pressing to get dollars for the FAST Center. And we were told, no, 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 we need to be conservative. Now we have an opportunity to not spend money, to get money coming in. So to the gentleman's remarks a few moments ago, that yes, that maybe tax dollars have not been given over the past however many years. For the homes that will be built, we will get money year over year. And there are such significant costs coming in the forthcoming Aprils, the town meetings for the fire and police. I don't have kids, so my 4 bedrooms, 0 kids. That with, I believe Dale Street is on the list to be improved. Fast Center is still on the list to be improved. So I really do hope that as we look at the dollars being spent, we think going forward, there's going to be some significant hits to tax bills. So I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 1.
John Haney, Maplewood Road. Now, I appreciate the good words of Mr. DeSorger and Frank Perry, who are Board of Assessors, and I certainly fully support everything that they've said. I really rise on this occasion to thank the Kenny family for so many decades of preserving that land and doing so well by the town. It's important for the meeting to know that what our action is tonight, which I trust will be to buy the land for the town, has no better benefit for her, for Robin Kenny or the family. She won't be enriched beyond what has been offered by the buyer. So the $1.4 million is what the land will go for one way or the other. Secondly, the hospital issue has been raised as being perhaps proximate to a lot of costs for the town. That is unknowable at this point. I'm on 3 committees relative to the hospital redevelopment, and I can tell you right now, we just don't know how all of that will turn out. The state has indeed made an offer to the town for the town to consider. The town has responded to that offer. But where things go from now, it will be years, I believe, before we spend any serious money, if ever, on the hospital. And indeed, it may work out that the town will reap benefit from the development of the hospital. In any case, the hospital shouldn't be under consideration tonight in any way. The Dale Street School did not come up at the Selectmen's meeting. It did not come up at last night's meeting of the Warrant Committee. So, you know, a number of things are projected here as costs to the town, which really are not in immediate consideration or even in proximate consideration. What we're talking about here is a fabulous property. You know, in the poet's words, a thing of beauty is a joy forever. We should buy this property and pass on that joy to the generations coming. Thank you.
Okay, we're down to our final 6 comments, so we'll try to hold to about a minute apiece. Microphone number 2.
Mr. Moderator, Scott Colwell, 1 Delaware Road. I am on that committee with Mr. Harney regarding the state hospital, and I would respectfully disagree with him. I would say that the potential of cost there hangs over us like a nuclear cloud. I want to just address a couple of red herrings that Mr. DeSorger threw out there regarding septic systems. Septic systems that are designed and approved in this town are the best in the state. This has the most difficult Board of Health to navigate, and I can tell you that from 35 years' experience. So that's a non-issue. We are essentially looking at buying a private park for the people of Phillip Street. There's no parking there. There's no parking. There'll be more parking if it's developed than if it's not, if the town buys it. I'm still waiting for parking on Plain Street. The people down there with the community garden have to park on the side of the road. You know, what happened to the parking we were supposed to get down there? We have all this land we bought there we can't use. As far as the school system goes, our school enrollment is down 13% in the last 7 years. If you filled every one of those houses with kids, it wouldn't have one iota, make one difference at all in the cost of educating kids. We have the room in the schools. We built the schools. We're paying the teachers. You can't fire them, so you might as well put the kids in the classroom. As far as commercial development in this town, we've tried this before. I was on EOCD before. It's never going to happen unless you come up with some type of tax incentive to do this. Forget about it. It's not going to happen. And one of the things I want you to consider is, I know you're all against construction, but when all of you people get in your cars and you go to Boston and you go to 128, 495, wherever you work, the people that support all of these small businesses in town are the tradespeople. They're the people supporting all these coffee shops. And I did tell you, we must drink more coffee per capita than anybody. And all the pizza places and the auto repairs and the hardware stores, none of you people are here. The tradespeople supply and keep those places in business. So think about that. One thing I want to think about, and I know it's great we have all this open space, and I know my family's contributed more to it than probably any other family. And I think it's actually closer to 50%, so I kind of disagree with your number there. But one of the things it does is it makes this town unaffordable. And your favorite, I heard your motto now, Mr. DeSorger, is we educate and we evacuate. And the reason people are evacuating is because the taxes keep going up. We've got $40 million of long-term debt. We haven't heard the number for our unfunded or our pensions liabilities. You know, we've got the police and fire station. But more than anything is the cost. And you know, as a school teacher, I have a lot of respect for you, but do you think you could move to this town today and buy a home? And more importantly, what we're doing here is when we buy this land, it's essentially class prejudice. We're basically telling the next generation, move on. We've got ours. The heck with you. So the people that we're affecting the most are our own kids. We raise them in this town. We tell them how great it is. You know, we support them. That's it. And they can't live here because of these policies.
Thank you. It's just my judgment that there was some insights and so forth, so I let him go a little long. Here we go, microphone number one.
Good evening, Alex Stevens, 86 Phillip Street. I actually live on the land that used to be the Kenny's land, and you can see in the map there, it's where the pond is and the old house and the waterfall. So thank you everybody for coming tonight. It's a great turnout, and I think probably even more than a regular April town meeting, it seems like. One of the reasons that we moved to Medfield with our 3 children who are all in the schools, thank you for all supporting that, was because of the open space, and I think a lot of our neighbors have a good number of kids in the schools, so the number of 1.5 children per house, my guess would be that that's low, and I think that the town's analysis is that even at that 1.5 number, it's break even or a small loss for the town versus the $20 to $30 change in tax assessment. If there turns out to be 2 or 3 children in each of these houses, then you're going to be looking at the same cost, whether it's open space or development. The second point I wanted to make is that while there is a huge percentage of conservation restriction in this development, it's conservation for your eyes and not for your feet and your exercise and anything else. You can drive by and look at it. You can admire it as you're nearly getting run over walking down Phillip Street, but you can't actually set foot on any of that 24 acres that's aside from the easement to the scout land. So lots and lots of people that I see walk down Nebo Street to Foundry Street and then either turn left or right on Phillip Street. To those people who are exercising, walking their dogs, riding their bikes, I think it would be a great advantage to be able to go down the dirt section of Foundry Street, walk behind the 2 houses that are there and through the woods and the fields. It would be a much nicer recreational experience. And as an abutter, I do have a vested interest in this, but I think the real safe bet for me as an abutter would be to say, let's go ahead with the development. It'll be 7 new neighbors. I'm sure they'll be all nice people. In fact, one of them
thank you.
I mean, okay, I'll finish.
Appreciate that. Okay, microphone number 2.
Charlie Glue, 41 Hearthstone. The question has come up on several occasions as to how much open space we have in town. And my rough calculations suggest that we have about 1,000 acres right now. Rocky Woods at 491, Noon Hill at 204, Rhododendron at 196, and the Sawmill Brook at 66. So roughly adding up to about 1,000 acres. We're talking 30 acres, which would add 3% to the recreation trail-based properties we have now at a cost of $1.4 million plus interest plus $150,000 a year in lost tax revenue. I think that's the way we have to look at it.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Okay, microphone number 1.
Jim Nail, 97 Hartford Street. I moved here in 1995. I have no children, so I bring that average down from 2 to 1.5. But I consider it a privilege to have been here during the time to invest in this town, in better schools, in a better library, in the town hall, and I hope that the town will support investing in open space, which is a huge asset and a huge attraction for this town. And as Will Rogers said, land is a great investment because they ain't making any more of it. It will continue to be an attraction to the town, and if we invest in this, we'll see that. I do want to compliment Mr. Viano on a very sensitive development plan. I think it could have been a lot worse. And, you know, as development go, it's good. But I'll also misquote Ogden Nash. I believe that I shall never see a subdivision as beautiful as a tree. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Neil O'Connor, 5 Phillips Street. Scott has already spoken about most of the points I wanted to bring up, but the biggest question is still I see lingering here is the issue of parking. We have a little bit of parking up at Noon Hill that we have made, but it's only designated for about 6 or 8 cars. Huge amount of land, not a lot of people that can park there to access it. Using Phillips Street as a question mark, right now there is little to no parking or access on that way. And with the development of this plan, the way it's set, they've already mentioned there's parking potentially on the side. I think with a little bit of nudging, they'd probably be able to do something with parking there. In seeing something where potentially, at no cost to the town, we could have access to this land, although be it through a trail to get to the scout land. It would give the town ultimate use of the land in the back with the ability of having no expenditure and no added tax base.
Thank you very much. Final comment, microphone number 1.
Thank you. Carol Reed, 1 Penobscot Street. I appreciated Mr. Viano bringing the net tax increase to my attention. I want to say that when I did the math, I was compelled through Mr. Sullivan's estimate. This 7-home development would bring in approximately $21,498 per home per year. And if there were 2 children in each of those homes, not 1.5, it would cost the town of Medfield $25,096 a year. Now, Mr. Sullivan, you said that doesn't include bus cost. I know years back we talked about per pupil for bus, maybe $300–400. So the net loss with 2 children is about $4,100 a year. When you multiply that by 12 years, the town is going to lose about $49,000 for 12 years for 2 students. When you multiply that out by 3 kids, it's $16,600 per year with 3 children with bus, a net loss to the town, with those homes bringing in $21,000. So I feel like over 21 years of living here, I'm proud because this community has supported many different things, and we've also lost votes, obviously with Park and Rec and pools And I feel like people in Medfield are fiscally prudent, and it's disingenuous to say that this is a huge expense to the town when we rightly so have to build a fire station and a police station, but it's fiscally not prudent to not realize the net loss to the town to educate kids and what those homes are going to bring in. And I think that's what we have to look at, because that's only $12,000 a year, today's cost to educate kids. In the Globe, there was an estimate this weekend that some towns are paying $28,000 per student. So I'm hoping we can vote to preserve this space, not only for our culture and the wonderful ambiance of Medfield, but only because it is fiscally prudent when you look at the numbers Mr. Viano and Mr. Sullivan shared.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll ask any from the platform, proponents and opponents, any final comments? Mr. Fisher?
Yeah. Mr. Peterson's going to start.
I was fortunate to be invited to walk this land by Michael Viano and Sean McEntee and Robin Kenny. It is beautiful land. Their development is very sensitive. I appreciated it. I finally came down on the side of the town buying it because they had negotiated a very inexpensive price in my estimation, and the town had the benefit of the right of first refusal on that. So for me it was, you really get the use of the property if you own it, and secondly that the price was very advantageous.
And I'll just finish things up a bit just to reiterate a couple of things. This is a terrific bargain. $1.4 million for 55 acres of land that the town will have access to. So figuring that out, you know, we're talking maybe about $119,000 is going to cost the town a year at the most. You know, $25, $28 a year for the average household. I mean, I don't have a problem paying $28 a year for us to preserve that. It's just, it just makes sense, and we'll have it forever. So as we all three had said, we're very, very much in favor of the town purchasing this land. Thank you.
Okay, since we had a couple of opponents, Mr. McEntee, you have a final comment? You can go to microphone number 1 there. Can I show a slide? Can you show a slide? Is it going to add to the benefit and the knowledge of the inside of this room? Good.
Sorry, I'm a data guy, and there's been a lot of debate, right, about this 1.5 number and being disingenuous. So I just think it's fair to show this, and I'm going to go down swinging if I go down. So. So this data, I reached out to Don Kennedy, who is a doctor of education. He works for an organization called NES-DEC, who Superintendent Marsden turned me on to as the preeminent source of this data. And in fact, we use them for enrollment projections. So I reached out to these folks, and he sent me an email, which is also in this slide deck and in my hand. So this is the real data. So the real data is we have 0.57 children per household. That's just a fact. And what Dr. Kennedy told me in a phone conversation and an email is that it's a very reasonable and, in fact, conservative projection to double that number for single-family new construction. So that's the data is actually 1.14 to 1.36. Based on conversations with selectmen, Superintendent Marsden, we felt it prudent to round that up to 1.5, which is, where that number came from. So we're not making that up, and I know that's hard for some people to accept because we all know a lot of families, with 2 and 3 kids. There's also a lot of people in this room, as one of the gentlemen said, that don't have any kids, and it's just an average game, and this is the real data. And in fact, Don said something funny to me on the phone. He said, for people that don't believe me, tell them that that data is not the plural of anecdotes. Basically, these are hard facts.
Good, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to call the question. Good. We're calling the question. Mr. Bletzer, ready? Mr. Gallagher, all set. Okay, anybody that's going to vote, please enter the room and find a seat if you intend to vote. I want to clarify that if everyone in the room who I'm looking at right here who is going to vote on this issue is a registered voter. If you are a visitor, if you are not a registered voter, please remove yourself to the visitor section. If you're a student and you're not a registered voter, please stay in the student section. I'll give everybody a chance to relocate. Okay, counters ready? Some of you who have been in town for a while know that I only do this one time now. So we make sure we get it right the first time. A reminder that in order to ensure passage, this motion requires a 2/3 vote. It's very important that we stay quiet and stay still until all of these votes are going to be counted. Before I do a counting, just as a matter of poll, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, show of hands. All in favor? Opposed? I'm going to declare that it carries by the 2/3 required. Wait, don't leave. Do not leave. If there are 7 folks that want to come forward and oppose that, please do it now. If there are not, I'm going to declare that it carried by the 2/3 required. I do declare that it carried by the 2/3 vote required. Okay, that's the end of our business. We do pause to thank a lot of people. I thank the school department, the orchestra, our warrant committee, the staff of the town clerk, public safety, the music department, my deputy moderators. Thank you very much for coming out. Oh yeah, we have an election. Oh, we have an election, very important, on Monday, October 21st. This issue is not decided. We've been here. It does require an election. I'll entertain October 21st at the polls. October 21st at the polls. I need a motion to dissolve the town meeting. Do I have a motion? I hear a motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Production support provided by Medfield.TV. Access to our community.